But why? Why are we not going to have this conversation? Matthew Dowd was not wrong. He was not blaming Charlie Kirk. He was stating the facts. And MSNBC's president went on to say violence is unacceptable, political or otherwise. And I just have to ask, what country do you live in? Because it can't possibly be this one.
What I am about to say puts a target on my back, but in moments like these, where speaking the truth comes with threats of retaliation, we have a moral and ethical duty to speak up. The Trump administration is citing falsified data and straight up lying about political violence in this country and which side of the aisle it comes from. So let's have a real conversation about political violence, because if the stakes are already this high, we might as well speak the truth.
Looks like a lot of people are losing their jobs because they made public comments, posts, things like that on social media about the murder of Charlie Kirk. Now, isn't that against the Constitution? Isn't there freedom of speech, right? Well, I am so glad you asked. Let's take a look at the text real quick. My name is Eurypsy Morgan, and I am an attorney. Here's what the text of the First Amendment actually says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech. It says more, but for our purposes, this is what's really important.
So just so we're clear, if you are a racist teacher in the U.S., in Florida, for instance, it's okay to say racist things. However, if you make commentary about the fact that you're not upset or not sad for losing Charlie Kirk, you can be fired.
Now they're coming after people who speak out against Charlie Kirk or mock Charlie Kirk's death. Literally, Pissy Pete said to report any soldiers that you see mocking or making light of Charlie Kirk's death, and they will receive punishment. Teachers are being punished and fired if they made light or mocked Charlie Kirk's death. What the fuck is going on?
What does it say about America when people are losing their jobs for the same words Charlie Kirk once said without consequence? Think about it. Teachers, comedians, even late-night hosts are being punished for criticizing or even repeating the same rhetoric Kirk himself used. But when Charlie Kirk said racist slurs, when he mocked George Floyd, when he degraded women and LGBTQ+ people, nothing happened to him. He thrived. He built a career out of it. Now suddenly, white people are being fired, and only now, they're calling it the death of free speech. But if you've been paying attention, free speech has been on life support for decades, at least for those who weren't white, straight, male, and protected by power.
Looks like a lot of people are losing their jobs because they made public comments, posts, things like that on social media about the murder of Charlie Kirk. Now, isn't that against the Constitution? Isn't there freedom of speech, right? Well, I am so glad you asked. Let's take a look at the text real quick. My name is Eurypsy Morgan, and I am an attorney. Here's what the text of the First Amendment actually says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech. It says more, but for our purposes, this is what's really important. So there it is. You know what the most important part of that is? The first word, Congress. The First Amendment applies to Congress not making certain laws. It does not apply necessarily to your employer, and this is why you're seeing that a lot of people are losing their job. You know, your employer can't actually pay you if they don't make money. And if they have employees that are out here making public, visible posts online that could, piss off a good amount of their customer base, we shouldn't be surprised that they let those employees go. And no, that isn't necessarily a violation of freedom of speech. Like I said, practically, because the First Amendment specifically is related to Congress, not your employer. And I keep saying necessarily because some employers are government, obviously. But the reality is that I think a lot of people have misunderstood what the First Amendment says and also forgotten that you can still have a public opinion. The people who are getting fired are not being prohibited from making their opinions public. They are, however, being reminded that there are consequences for expressing your opinion publicly. And the First Amendment was never intended to stop people from having consequences for our actions. It was intended to curtail the government. And, it's kind of crazy to me that so many people have forgotten that there really are consequences to what we do. Teachers specifically, right? There have been a number of teachers who have made public statements on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and they're getting fired. That one, I think, is also shouldn't be a huge surprise, because you're talking about a profession that literally teaches children. And let's be honest, it's not just math and reading and science. You teach children how to behave, how to function in society, critical thinking skills, judgment. And if my daughter's third grade teacher doesn't have the wherewithal to, or lacks critical thinking, and doesn't have the wherewithal to say that, hey, I feel a certain way about a specific topic, but just because I feel a certain way about something, maybe I don't have to publicly express it. You can still retain your opinion, but you don't have to publicly express it. That is having good judgment. If you've got teachers who are out here, making these statements and then walking into a classroom, it really does make me worry about how can you teach kids to think critically if you're not exhibiting the same behavior yourself? So it's not a surprise to me that a lot of people are losing their jobs, and that they are facing significant backlash. Again, it's not because you had the opinion necessarily, it's because you expressed it publicly, and that public expression shows a significant lack of judgment and critical thinking. And you know what? It's not unconstitutional, but it should make us think twice about what we do in the public sphere.
Charlie Kirk had the right to his opinion, so how come nobody else gets that same courtesy? When did conservatives fall in love with cancel culture? Because I thought that was the weakest thing that you could do. Y'all remember when conservatives said cancel culture was weak and un-American to do? They said, real Americans don't cancel people, they debate them. Fast forward to now. Charlie Kirk dies, and fast forward to conservatives calling for people who have a difference of opinion to be fired. Businesses are now being boycotted because they didn't clutch their pearls in the right way. So let me get this straight. When conservatives cancel people, it's called patriotism. But when everybody else does it, it's woke cancel culture. I'm going to tell you what this Charlie Kirk stuff exposes. It exposes, again, the hypocrisy. Because according to Republicans, you can have any opinion you want as long as it's their opinion. You can support any business as long as that business kisses the conservative ring. That's not leadership. That's a dictatorship with different branding. I don't know about the rest of you, but I didn't sign up to be a sheep. I didn't sign up for government or a movement to tell me what I can and cannot say, who I can support, whose death I'm required to care about. Charlie Kirk had the right to his opinion. So how come nobody else gets that same courtesy? So I gotta ask, when did cancel culture become conservative culture? Because all I see now is a party that swore canceling was weak, but now it's their newfound hobby.
Charlie Kirk was rewarded for hate. That's the starting point we can't ignore. He built a platform out of mocking vulnerable groups, saying black people were better off as slaves, saying he didn't trust black pilots, calling Martin Luther King Jr. awful, and spreading violent rhetoric that many scholars now call stochastic terrorism. He wasn't punished. He was funded. He was invited on mainstream media. But today, ordinary people are being punished for words far less harmful. Employees repeating Kirk's own statements, sometimes to criticize him, are shown the door. Comedians making comments about his death are silenced. The hypocrisy is staggering. Kirk could say anything. They can't say anything about him. This is the moment white America is waking up. They're realizing freedom of speech in this country has always been conditional. Not based on the law, but on power. And for decades, people of color, women, LGBTQ+ communities, they've been telling us this.
What I am about to say puts a target on my back, but in moments like these, where speaking the truth comes with threats of retaliation, we have a moral and ethical duty to speak up. The Trump administration is citing falsified data and straight up lying about political violence in this country and which side of the aisle it comes from. So let's have a real conversation about political violence, because if the stakes are already this high, we might as well speak the truth. Political violence is more than just physical harm. It is the systemic use of force, intimidation, and dehumanization dehumanization to achieve political goals. Does that sound familiar to you? While this entire country is built on a legacy of political violence, this administration is taking it to a whole new level. When policies are actively crafted to dismiss the needs of the many in the interest of the powerful few, that is violence. Stripping people's life-saving healthcare benefits to give tax breaks to the wealthy is violent. Forcing a victimized young girl to carry a pregnancy to term to please the religious donors in your party is violence. From ICE raids to revoking investments in Black and Hispanic communities, there are endless examples of violence done by this Trump administration. The conversation the Trump administration doesn't want us having is that the culture of dehumanization and desperation that these policies create lay the groundwork for folks to escalate their levels of violence. So if they're gonna manipulate this narrative to suit their political ends, I'm gonna have the high risk and honest conversation about the fact that political violence is initiated by a country's leadership and culture long before anyone pulls a trigger.
The reason why so many people are losing their jobs over the Charlie Kirk situation is because the powers that be, they want you to know that they control your lives and that the concept of freedom of speech and everything else is just an illusion. Like, are we starting to understand it? That this is an illusion that we live in? These so-called individual rights only exist to uphold the power system. And if you yourself are not going to use those individual rights to protect the powers that be, then you don't have rights, right? And they know that the vast majority of people are too docile to do anything about it. We're just going to get online and complain about it until they literally come collect us in chains. And for white people, they're letting you know that you've squandered your privilege, right? And if you as a white person aren't willing to uphold the system of racism and inequality, then we're going to take back your white privilege. The only privilege here is racism, right? If you can't uphold racism, then there is no privilege. You don't get to be a free thinking, free person just for the sake of being that, talking against the powers that be. No, you only get to speak to uphold the power system. Why do you think they wanted to take away TikTok? Because the vast majority of us aren't using it to uphold the system of capitalism, of patriarchy, of white supremacy. There is no such thing as any fucking right that America has drummed the fuck up. Only the system of power. But this message won't hit the right people anyways, right? Vast majority of people are too docile to care or do anything, and they're just gonna pray to Jesus in hopes that he fix it.
Jimmy Kimmel's firing hit differently because it showed that even white celebrities, even those at the top, aren't untouchable if they dare cross the line of criticizing a figure like Kirk. He wasn't spreading hate. He wasn't threatening anyone. He was expressing an opinion about Charlie Kirk's death, and that alone was enough to end his career. Here's the thing. When Kirk's speech targeted minorities, conservatives framed the outrage as cancel culture. They defended him under the banner of free speech. But when people like Kimmel spoke against Kirk, suddenly freedom of speech didn't apply. Suddenly, consequences weren't just the market at work. They were punishment. They were silencing. That's where the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. Because it's not about free speech. It's about whose speech is protected and whose speech is punished.
But why? Why are we not going to have this conversation? Matthew Dowd was not wrong. He was not blaming Charlie Kirk. He was stating the facts. And MSNBC's president went on to say violence is unacceptable, political or otherwise. And I just have to ask, what country do you live in? Because it can't possibly be this one. It is intellectually lazy to rely on these vapid platitudes that do not reflect the reality of this country. And that reality is that this country is predicated on violence. Our culture is violent. Our political systems are violent. And there are people who are incentivized by money and power to further that violence. And that includes you, MSNBC. You make money off of the violence. The entire point of Charlie Kirk's rhetoric was to inflict violence on people, whether that be to inspire individuals to do violent acts or to inspire violence being done by our politicians and legislatures and on to vulnerable people. But our news stations have no problem uplifting that kind of violence or call to violence. Our system is violent. Our carceral system is violent. Our immigration system is violent. Just because people in ties and suits okay the violence from behind desks does not change that it is violent. The bombs we drop are violent. The way we treat minorities in this country is violent. Donald Trump on the presidential show getting joy out of the idea of punching people or firing squads. This is a violent country, and until you can be adults and have adult conversations about the nature and cycle of violence, nothing can change.
Now they're coming after people who speak out against Charlie Kirk or mock Charlie Kirk's death. Literally, Pissy Pete said to report any soldiers that you see mocking or making light of Charlie Kirk's death, and they will receive punishment. Teachers are being punished and fired if they made light or mocked Charlie Kirk's death. What the fuck is going on? How is it okay for Charlie Kirk to have free speech and say whatever the fuck he wants about whoever the fuck he wants to say it about? But now, when other Americans want to say whatever the fuck they want to say about his death, y'all are trying to come after them and punish them and get them fired from their jobs? What fucking sense does that make? I thought we were all about freedom and freedom of speech. But now that Charlie Kirk is dead, motherfuckers gotta be sad about the shit. We don't gotta be fucking sad about that shit. He was a racist piece of shit. And people can feel however the fuck they want to feel about it and express how they feel about it however they fucking want to. Is it because everybody saw it and nobody gives a fuck, nobody feels bad for him? Because he wouldn't feel bad for him. Why the fuck should we feel bad for somebody who wouldn't feel bad for himself? He don't give a fuck about empathy or sympathy. To him, this was worth it. Him losing his life for y'all Second Amendment right is worth it. So get the fuck over it.
The myth of American free speech is cracking. The First Amendment is real, but its promise has always been half a truth. It protects against government censorship, but it doesn't shield you from consequences, and those consequences are never applied equally. Martin Luther King Jr. was monitored, harassed, and eventually killed for his words. Malcolm X faced the same fate. Colin Kaepernick lost his career for kneeling silently in protest. Meanwhile, white supremacists march openly, chanting violent slogans, and walk away untouched. Charlie Kirk mocked George Floyd's death and was paid for it. What's happening now isn't the collapse of free speech. It's exposure. It's the mask slipping. White people are finally feeling what others have endured for decades. And for the first time, they're realizing speech in America has never been free. It has always come with a price tag, and that price depends on who you are.
Y'all, this is your sign to be careful with what you post about Charlie Kirk, because freedom of speech only applies to the government, and these companies will take your job. Like, I've already seen people from news stations get fired, Office Depot, Delta, NASDAQ, universities, and schools, and I'm like, I thought they had a teacher shortage. But they don't care about none of that. They don't care if you got a family to feed at home. They don't care if you got bills to pay. They will take your job, especially if you were seen celebrating his death. And it does not matter how many views your video got or how many likes your comment received. If one person sees it, screenshots it, finds out where you work and says it to them, you might just lose your job. And what's crazy is I've already seen a whole bunch of people make videos about how they've lost their jobs, and it's sad because every single comment section ain't nobody feeling bad for them. Matter of fact, they're celebrating the fact that they've lost their job. Now let me be clear, these companies aren't firing people just for simply talking about it. They're firing the people that were celebrating and being happy about his death. This is why I said in a previous video, there's a difference between celebration and indifference. So PSA, if you're happy about it, keep it to yourself, because there are individuals out there that will dox you and try everything in their power to ruin your life because they don't agree with your opinion.
So just so we're clear, if you are a racist teacher in the US, in Florida, for instance, it's okay to say racist things. However, if you make commentary about the fact that you're not upset or not sad for losing Charlie Kirk, you can be fired. Yeah. So racist, okay, but not in support of Charlie Kirk, not okay. I know I have a lot of followers from all over the world that are baffled by how we do things here in the US, and I'm sure this is just adding to the list. We are already in a major teacher shortage, so I can't even imagine what happens to some of our kids now. And also, if you're in the military and you're found to be making disparaging marks on Charlie Kirk, you can be sanctioned for that as well.
Let's be clear. Free speech in America has been weaponized. It's not a universal principle. It's a political tool. When Kirk said something racist, his defenders shouted, "He has the right to speak." When critics called him out, those same defenders wanted silence. When people commented on his death, they demanded firings. So the question is, what's really being protected? Not freedom, not equality. What's being protected is the power to control the narrative. Racism is tolerated. Criticism of racism is not. Hate is defended. Justice is punished. And it's all wrapped in the illusion of free speech. The firing spree we're seeing now is the logical conclusion of decades of hypocrisy. Because if speech only protects the powerful, it was never free to begin with.
You guys remember that lady that was recorded at the playground calling that little black kid the N-word repeatedly, multiple times? You know the one. She said her and her family were getting attacked online afterwards and she was catching threats. She didn't feel safe. She couldn't go to work, all that stuff. And she raised $800,000. Yeah, she made a GoFundMe or whatever that website is called, and they gave her $800,000. One of the main justifications I was getting in the comments was everybody should be able to provide for their family and feed their children, but they gave her $800,000. Those are the same people that are frantically trying to get anybody that said anything they didn't like about Charlie Kirk fired. The same people that gave a woman that called a child the N-word repeatedly $800,000 because, quote, everybody deserves to be able to feed their family. Tell me again, please tell me again how racism is not a problem in this country.
People are losing their jobs right now for talking negative about Charlie Kirk's death, as they should. What kind of animal would talk negative about a person's death? That is crazy. People are losing their jobs and posting it on the internet like the internet is something to play with. That's crazy. I mean, come on. That man was a spokesperson. He was no gangster. Y'all talk like he was a gangster, like he was out there doing a lot of wrong to people. No, he wasn't. Debating, getting the word out there. There's no need for all these negative talks y'all putting out there on this man's death. And you wonder why you losing your job right now, because you're not smart enough to just say it in the air. No, you rather put it on the internet. That's smart. I tell you, boy, some of you people out there, I don't know what to say about you guys, man. You talk negative, knowing you got a job you're trying to protect, but you put it on the internet. Yes, that's a smart person. That's why you're losing your job. That's why I'm not sad about it. I'm not mad because you lose your job. Frankly, I'm kind of happy because you're that dumb. Boy, you people is crazy, man. R.I.P. Charlie Kirk. Prayers and condolences to his wife and kids. We speaking loud, Charlie. We speaking loud. I know they hear us. And I love you guys, and I'm out.
So here we are. The firings, the outrage, the hypocrisy. It's all forcing a reckoning. White America is finally experiencing what marginalized people have always known, that speech here isn't free. It's conditional. It's controlled. The question now is, will this realization spark real change? Or will it fade once the pain is no longer personal? Because if outrage only exists when white people are silenced, then nothing changes. But if this moment becomes a turning point, if people finally demand speech that protects everyone equally, then maybe this exposure leads to transformation. This is the wake-up call. Not just about Kirk, not just about firings, but about the system itself. Free speech will never exist until it applies to everyone, or it applies to no one.
I made a comment saying that Charlie Kirk was a racist, and I was encouraged heavily to go back and rewatch his videos in their entirety instead of taking little snippets and clips from videos and taking them out of context. And because I'm not afraid to admit that I was wrong, because I do always want to learn and educate myself, I did exactly that, and I decided to rewatch a lot of his videos. And I gotta admit that I am a little bit embarrassed because I truly did not know a lot of what he said. I wasn't privy to it because I did stop watching him quite a long time ago because I did feel that he was a little bit racist. But after rewatching them, I am embarrassed because I realized that I've been being Black wrong my entire life, and I had no clue. I genuinely color me shocked to find out that I could wield my DEI card and I could get any position that I wanted, despite the fact that I am woefully unqualified. So I am going to apply to be the head of cardio at a hospital, maybe a pilot, I don't know, for fun. I don't know, I was thinking about being the CEO of a company, and I'm going to tell them that I want to be a DEI hire and that they have to hire me because I'm a Black woman. And I didn't know I could do that. I truly didn't know. If I had known that, I probably would have gotten into Yale with my grades. I got really good grades in high school for the most part, and I didn't know. I had no clue that all I had to do was tell them that I wanted to get in because I'm Black on the basis of being Black. I didn't know. I feel so stupid because Charlie enlightened me, and he, even though he himself had zero credentials, he did call into question the credentials of plenty of qualified people on the basis of their race. And he thought that they were not qualified for their position. He was skeptical because he thought they were getting in simply because of their race, that if there was a Black pilot, he should be wary of that. If there's a Black doctor, he should be wary of that. Even at some point, he called a Black woman, said that there are moronic Black women in customer service positions, and that he thinks they got it because of DEI. So I'm going to use that to my advantage and take those positions from some unsuspecting white men. And sorry about it, buddy. You weren't born with the right privilege. I'm just going to start taking people's jobs, and then I might get involved in some other 13% activities and maybe get heavily involved in some gang violence later. I don't know, maybe go rob a store. I don't know. The world is my oyster. Thank you for opening my eyes, Charlie.
This isn't just about Charlie Kirk. It's about what his story revealed. The illusion of free speech is breaking down in America. The hypocrisy has been laid bare. And the choice ahead of us is clear. Either demand a system where all voices can be heard, or accept that silence will eventually come for us all. So the challenge is simple. Don't just fight for your own speech. Fight for speech that protects the powerless as much as it protects the powerful. Otherwise, the words freedom of speech will mean nothing.